Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to show a 2015 gothic romance film called Crimson Peak. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. In Buffalo, New York, 1887, Carter Cushing's wife has succumbed to black cholera, leaving him alone to raise their only daughter, Edith. The young Edith always believed that ghosts were real, but she has never seen one until a few nights after her mother's death. It was a stormy night and Edith had woken up in her bed. She sat up and looked at the hallway where a lone dark figure emerged. It was her mother's ghost, her black garbs hanging onto her rotting corpse. Edith huddled closer to her bed as the ghost grabbed her shoulders and in a hoarse voice warned her about Crimson Peak. Edith screamed and got out of bed only to find the ghost gone. It would be years until she heard that voice again. 14 years later, in the year 1901, Edith is now an aspiring writer hoping to get published. On the way to see her editor, she stumbles upon her childhood friend, Dr. Alan McMichael, and his family. Mrs. McMichael boasts about a young baronet that her daughter, Eunice, had managed to capture from England. The next day, Edith meets the baronet, Sir Thomas Sharpe, who has come to meet Edith's father for business. Later that night, as Edith is reading in her bedroom, a haunting force wriggles her doorknob and forces her door open. Edith stands terrified to her wits as she stares down the hallway to look at the ghost that has emerged. She hurriedly slams the door shut, but the ghost pushes through the wood, grabbing her by the shoulders and again, in a hoarse voice, warns her about Crimson Peak. One of her maids arrives and helps her up, telling her that Sir Thomas Sharpe is waiting downstairs. Thomas invites her to a party and a reluctant Edith agrees. Thomas introduces Edith to his sister, Lady Lucille Sharpe, and then spends the whole night waltzing with her. Mr. Cushing grows suspicious of the Sharpe siblings and hires a private detective, Mr. Hawley, to dig some dirt on the two. Edith soon grows fond of the Sharpes, particularly Thomas. In Mr. Cushing's office, Mr. Hawley comes back and hands over a document, telling him that it's bad news. Later that night, as the Cushings hold a dinner for their social circle, Mr. Cushing invites the Sharpe siblings to his private study. He then bribes them to leave and for Thomas to break Edith's heart. That same night, Thomas announces their departure and breaks up with Edith. The next morning, Mr. Cushing is found dead in his bathroom, his head smashed against the bathroom sink. Unbeknownst to her father's fate, Edith receives a letter from Thomas telling her about her father's bribery. Edith then sees Thomas, who has come back for her, and the two share a deep kiss. Several moments later, Edith learns of her father's death. The burial takes place and soon after, Edith is married to Thomas, making her the new Lady Edith Sharpe. Not long after her father's death, Edith moves to Allerdale Hall in England with Thomas. As Edith tries to make herself feel at home, she starts seeing apparitions. Later that night, she sips the tea they prepared and slips into bed. On the other side of the Atlantic, Alan is overseeing the transfer of the Cushing's assets to England. He learns that the last check Mr. Cushing wrote was addressed to the Sharpe siblings. This ignites his suspicion and he begins his own investigation. Later that same day, Edith visits Thomas in his workshop. Finding themselves alone, they engage in a passionate kiss until they're interrupted by Lucille, who's come to bring more tea. Deep into the night, Edith is woken up by a sharp pain in her stomach. As she searches for Thomas, a sound guides her into one of the doors. She opens it and finds a small chest of wax cylinder recordings. As she turns away, a moan catches her attention and she turns to the hallway. A rotting corpse has emerged from the floor, moaning, red and bloody, its fingers crawling its way on the floors. Edith makes a run for the elevator and finds herself deep in the basement, where they store the red clay pits. She stumbles upon a trunk with the initials E and S, belonging to someone named Enola. The next morning, Thomas tells Edith that they'll never be able to fix the machine before winter, and when the snow comes, that's when she'll learn why the locals call the place Crimson Peak. Edith's heart stops at the mention of the last two words. Thomas then tells her that it's because the ore in the red clay leaches up from the ground and stains the snow, turning it bright red. Edith can only stand in silence as she remembers the warning from years ago. Later that night, Edith dreams of a rotting corpse in the middle of the field before she wakes up in a bloody, coughing fit. She calls out to the ghost in her dreams to give her a signal. An unseen force pushes her down to the floor and the scream comes out from her bathroom. Edith slowly makes her way towards the sounds and opens the doors to find a woman drenched in her own blood, a butcher's knife dug deep into her head. The woman stands up and moans at her, following everywhere she goes. Edith screams and Thomas and Lucille find her on the stairs. With tears in her eyes, Edith shares her terrifying encounter. While Lucille is dismissive, Thomas insists that she only needs a bit of fresh air. Thomas takes Edith to the depot the next morning. Edith receives some letters from her lawyer and one letter from Milan, Italy. Meanwhile, in New York, Alan meets up with Mr. Hawley, who gives him the same document he gave to Edith's father. The document is a civil document revealing that Thomas is already married to Pamela Upton. Back in England, Thomas and Edith are snowed in and are forced to stay in one of the rooms at the depot. This is the first time they've truly been alone since their marriage, and they finally make love. The next day at Allerdale Hall, Lucille is angry at Edith for spending the night outside with Thomas. As Lucille goes away to make tea, Edith steals one of the keys and makes her way to the basement. She opens up the trunk and finds 3 envelopes with names on them: Enola Scioti from Milan, Margaret McDermott from Edinburgh, and Pamela Upton from London. Meanwhile, Lucille realizes that one of her keys is missing. She rushes to Edith's room and finds her resting. She places her keys on the table and leaves to get Edith a glass of water. When she comes back, her keys are complete once again. Edith now knows their dark secret. Later that night, Edith continues her investigation and listens to the cylinder recordings on a gramophone. The voice belongs to Pamela Upton, revealed to be one of Thomas's previous wives. As Edith listens to the recordings, she learns through letters and pictures that Thomas has been married 3 times, the latest one being Enola Scioti, an heiress from Milan and the previous owner of the dog. They killed each woman for their money and slowly poisoned them with the tea. Horrified, Edith runs to the main doors only to find that the entire manor is snowed in. Desperate for help, she collapses on the cold stairs. Unbeknownst to the Sharpes, Alan has landed in England and is now on his way to Allerdale Hall. Late into the night, Edith is coughing up clumps of blood. She makes her way to the Grand Hall and sees a lonesome figure floating in the air and carrying a baby. The figure points its fingers up to the attic. Edith follows the ghost's direction and finds herself outside Lucille's bedroom. As she hears the moans coming from inside, her heart prepares for the worst. She opens the door and stands petrified of the sight before her. Edith has caught Thomas making love to his own sister, Lucille, as he did every night since the day of their marriage. Edith runs out but is confronted by Lucille near the edge of the stairway. She then pushes Edith off the edge and she lands on the main floor of the manor below. When Edith wakes up, she finds Alan tending to her broken foot. Alan tells her that he knows what's going on and he's going to take her away. As they make a run for it, they are stopped by the Sharpes. Lucille then stabs Alan. Alan stumbles to the front door before Lucille hands Thomas the knife. Thomas is torn between his love for Edith and for his sister, but deep in his heart, he knows he wants Edith to live. He then gives Alan a non-fatal stab wound and hides him away from his sister. Lucille drags Edith to her room, forcing her to sign the final papers. Edith soon learns that the baby was actually Lucille's, a product of her years-long incestuous relationship with Thomas. Lucille also admits to her that she was the one who killed their mother after she found out about their relationship. Edith grips her pen as she listens to the deranged monologue. As Lucille turns around to mock her, Edith stabs the pen onto Lucille's chest. Lucille stumbles to the ground, the blood oozing from her chest as Edith makes her way to escape. Thomas finally catches up to her sister and burns the papers that Edith signed. Horrified, Lucille realizes that his brother has fallen in love with Edith. She accuses him of betrayal, and in her moment of hurt, she stabs him in the chest multiple times and then finally on his face. Thomas slips down to the floor, blood escaping his body as he slowly succumbs to death. Lucille holds him in her arms, hugging him as he draws his last breaths. As Edith calls out for Thomas, she is faced with an enraged Lucille, ready to draw blood. She escapes through the elevator, but Lucille catches up to her. In the kitchen, a struggle ensues. Edith is trapped in the elevator and slices the knife on Lucille's hand, but she won't budge. She then slams the elevator gate to the side, forcing her to drop her knife. Lucille manages to cut Edith's face as the elevator sinks down to the mines. In the basement, Edith finds Alan bleeding but alive. She hides him away and faces Lucille's wrath alone. Lucille taunts her with the same butcher's knife that she used on their mother. Edith runs towards the digging machine and climbs it. She finds herself on the snowy estate grounds, now a deep crimson red from the ores. Lucille soon catches up to her and with a bleeding hand takes the knife away from Edith. Edith stumbles to the ground but manages to catch herself and pull a shovel from the snow. She cries out for help, but Lucille tells her that there's no one to help her now. Edith tells her to turn around and look at him. Lucille slowly turns around to see the bleeding ghost of her brother, Thomas. As she looks back, Edith slams her with the shovel and she falls to the ground. Lucille reaches for the butcher's knife and makes her way to Edith, but before she could finish her sentence, Edith lands one last final blow to her head. Lucille's neck snaps in two as she drops to the ground, dead. Edith tosses the shovel away and walks towards the ghost of her supposed husband. Thomas can only look at her with love and deep regret before he disappears together with the snowy air. Edith saves Alan from the basement, and together they walk away from the estate and towards the workers who are now appearing at the horizon. Back at the manor, a lonesome figure sits by the piano. Lucille has now become the Black Lady of Allerdale Hall, forever confined within its rotting and sinking walls.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.